Welcome back to our fourth episode for the Daily Counter News podcast. As always, on this show, we're going to be discussing articles we're working on, articles that we've written. Today, we're going to talk about South Carolina's epidemic on child predators. Over the years, we've looked at numbers and everything, and we've been trying to figure out a way to tell this story and get information out there. So, since January 1st, South Carolina Attorney General's office has charged 32 cases in child predator. When we started digging into the laws of South Carolina and how sentencing is done, what bylaws are there and everything, we kind of got interested in there are a few different ways we're going at this. So what we decided to do is we're going to actually bring up the laws and kind of talk about it. And as always, you can actually call into the show if you have any questions or anything. And you can dial 803-497-8124 and be a part of the show. We don't exclude our listeners or readers from our show. We want to hear your guys' take on these things as well. So we're just going to jump right into this. One of the first things we want to show here is the common types of crimes against children. So what we did was we brought it up here, and the first thing you notice is that according to, and this is done by a report that South Carolina had out back in 2005, under Title 163655, the first type of penetration offense with children under the age of 16. The second one was lewd acts, contact offenses with children under 16. The third one actually was sexual battery with a student. Now we're going to get into that one a little bit more because we find that very interesting on how South Carolina views this and the sentencing on these sort of things. The fourth one is sexual performance, which is employing or introducing a minor under age of 18 to engage in a sexual performance. The next one was criminal solicitation, which this is the one that mostly happens. It's communicating with a minor under the age of 18 for the purpose of enticing the minor to participate in sexual activity. This is what you hear about on mainstream media, where they're talking to these people and they're talking to children and they're enticing them to, hey, come over and visit, we'll sit down, watch movies, whatever, this sort of stuff. The last one is sexual exploitation. This is producing a visual representation of a minor engaging in sexual activity. So those are the common ones according to the 2005 report that was done by South Carolina. The next one we want to show is the actual laws that are reported under this stuff. Let me bring it up here. My computer is a little slower than what I'm able to bring up on the screen, so just bear with me for a moment here. I do apologize. Computers are not as quick as they are when you first buy them. Okay, let's just do this another way then. It's not the program we want to bring this up in. And now my computer is going crazy. Here we go. Open with Okay, we're back on here. Okay, in South Carolina, the age of the offender is a key factor in determining the severity of the charges for criminal sexual conduct with a minor, with the age of the victim also playing a crucial role. So basically, what that means is South Carolina views the age of the predator and the age of the victim, and they kind of balance it out. Here's a breakdown of relevant age ranges and legal classifications. For first degree criminal sexual conduct, Type 1, the victim is under 11 years old. Type 2, the victim is under the age of 16 years old, and the offender has a prior conviction for a specified offense. The second degree criminal sexual conduct, which is Type 1, the victim is between 11 and 14 years old. Type 2, the victim is between 14 and 15 years old, and the offender is older than the victim. The third degree criminal sexual conduct is the offense involves consensual sexual conduct with a person who is at least 14 years of age, and the offender is 18 years of age or less. Now, we're going to get back to this again. Sexual battery with a student prohibits specified acts between a person affiliated with a public or private secondary school and students enrolled in those schools. Now, secondary schools are your high schools, okay? So this is a specific law pertaining to high school students and teachers or staff, and it literally states prohibits specified acts between a person affiliated with a public or private secondary school. The next one is Youthful Offenders Act. A person under the age of 17 can be bound over for criminal proceedings to the court of the general sessions for allegedly committing criminal sexual conduct with a minor in the third degree. Sex offender registry. Juvenile offenders can be classified into two tiers, with tier 2 being the most severe, and the time required to apply for removal from the registry varies on the tier. Sexually Violent Predator Act. A person who is potentially an actual subject of proceedings under this act includes a child under 17 years of age. So those are basically the rough aspects of the laws in South Carolina when it comes to this matter. So the next one we want to pull up is, this one finds a little bit more interesting, and I believe it pertains a little bit more to the counties. And again, this is from a 2005 report that was put out by South Carolina, and it really kind of gives you a breakdown of how many of these cases occurred in the county specifically during 2005. And if you'll notice, there are some high counts here, like in Aiken in 2005 there was 193 cases of sexual violence against children. In Anderson there was 152, in Berkeley 110, Charleston County 214, in Greenville 372, in Horry County 128, in Lexington County 133, in Orangeburg 104, 146 in Spartanburg, and in York County 198. These are high numbers for this sort of crime to be occurring, and the aspect of this is a report from 2005, and what we're going to show next is that there has been a steady increase since 1991 in these sort of cases. I mean, these are not going away. These are not getting less. They are becoming more prevalent in South Carolina. You know, in 1991, there were 2,117 cases of sexual violence against children. As you look down through the numbers, you know, let's go 98, there was 2,500. In 2005, there was 3,100 cases of sexual violence against children. So these numbers are going up and up and up, and the numbers today are staggering as to how many times this is occurring in South Carolina. You know, we try to get information and validate everything we do on Daily Counter News. And one of the things that we found out is that this report that came out in 2005 has not been duplicated for 2010, 2015, 2020. This is the only report we've been able to find to give us these numbers. So we kind of question, why is this not being publicly acknowledged in mainstream media? The part that we're going to get to now is where it specifically deals with sexual battery with a student. This is the one where we're talking about secondary schools, your high schools. And in the Code of Laws, or in this report, it actually states sexual battery with a student prohibits specified acts between a person affiliated with a public or private secondary school and students enrolled in these schools. So this specific section in South Carolina is designed for staff members of a high school and students. Now, we find it very odd that South Carolina would have a specific section for something like this in its guidelines and in its laws. But then when we looked into it more, we got even more baffled by it. And what we're talking about here is the sentencing for these crimes. It really does come down to, I guess, how a judge wants to view these crimes and how they want to proceed with them. Because the one thing we found out is that these crimes, a judge has the discretion on how long an individual will be in jail for. And we actually pulled this from the same report that for a first degree in Tier 1, they required to sentence a mandatory minimum of 25 years to life. And in Tier 2, a mandatory minimum 10 years to 30 years maximum. And then you go down and it's second degree, 20 years maximum. Lewd acts, 15 years maximum. Sexual battery with a student. Now this is the one pertaining to teachers or staff members in a secondary school system. 5 years, 30 days, 5 years for the 3 different levels they have within this category. Now the other aspect of this is that these individuals are not required to register with the sex offenders registry. So if you're a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, vice principal, medical staff, you are basically exempt, if you're charged with these crimes, from having to register. Which means once you're done serving your sentence of 5 years maximum, you can go out, get another job in another school, and do the same thing again. Then we go down to sexual performance, which is a maximum of 20 years. Solicitation is 10 years, and sexual exploitation is 20 years. Now, all these other offenses have to register with the South Carolina Registry, sex offenders. Now, the other thing we wanted to bring up was that in the modern age of internet and AI, we found it very interesting that there were no laws really connecting anything to modern day technology. And we found an article that interested us. Apparently, some family members whose children's pictures were taken from social media approached a legislator, Senator Hutto, and stated, hey, these children's pictures were taken from social media. They were applied to photographs, morphed or altered into sexual viewing, and is there anything you can do about this? So this was the case here, and Senator Hutto actually made the statement that in South Carolina, these sort of crimes, and they are crimes, are not prosecuted under these guidelines of sexual criminal conduct. Basically, what it says is Senator Brad Hutto, chair of the Joint Citizens and Logistical Committee on Children's New Threat to Children's Safety and Well-Being, every day, partially online. You know, the line between real and fiction is disappearing. So what he has done is he has proposed 2 bills to change this to where these are prosecutable crimes under the Attorney General's office. So if you have a child out there, you know, and you hear this all the time all over the place, is be careful what your children are posting online. And this is one of the reasons. People can actually take their pictures, cut them out, morph them, AI them, however you want to refer to it, on other people's bodies in sexual positions, sexual exploitations. And these are pictures that are going to be out there for the entirety of the time that we know of. And these children are going to be facing with this. Somebody might see their face and say, hey, I saw your picture, yada, yada, yada. And the individuals that did this aren't prosecutable. So, you know, the other aspects of it is when we talk about statutes of limitations on crimes like these, is in South Carolina. Now, there are no statutes of limitations on criminal prosecution of these sort of crimes. So if it happened 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line, these individuals can still be prosecuted criminally. Now, the other aspect of this is there is a statute of limitations for civil recourse. And what that basically means is if the victim wants to later on sue the individual for money and try to recuperate some sort of financial aspect so they can move on with their life, there is a 6-year limitation, statute of limitations, after the victim ages at 21. So when they turn 21, they have 6 years to file civil suits against these predators. And that is pretty much the way it is across the United States in this aspect. Another thing we found out was some of these individuals, some of these child sexual predators, go to court and they don't see the inside of a jail. They see the inside of a mental facility because they've been deemed mentally unstable for these acts. Now here's the interesting part. When these individuals are committed, they are turned over to mental health, and they are deemed by a psychologist at some point, if ever, normal, that the mental illness has passed. They're released then back out into society, where they may do it again, may not do it again, you never know. But they are not, again, registered. So we find it very interesting that South Carolina has these sort of guidelines and rules, not very specific, not very hard on these sort of criminals. When we're talking about children, I mean, these predators are taking children, taking their innocence, violating the crimes, and they're getting basically a slap on the wrist. As a parent, most of us have seen films like Mississippi Burning and so forth, where parents have taken justice in their own hands, and you hear about it in media every few days or every few months, that a parent has taken justice in their own hands because the judicial system has become lacking. Well, the aspect of these sort of things is very simple. Have our laws pertaining to children been downsized to nothingness? You know, these children will have these scars, mental, sometimes physical, for the endurance of their entire life. And these criminals might serve only 20 years, if they serve anything at all, or maybe put into a mental facility. So you have to ask yourself, what are legislators in South Carolina thinking when it comes to this matter? The best way to handle these things is to go to your legislator, speak to them on these subject matters, say, hey, you know, we looked into this, bring the evidence, so forth. You know, we don't ever want to think that children lose their innocence in this manner, but it happens every day, all over the world, all over the U.S., all over South Carolina. The sad part comes when we expect justice and we don't get it for our children. You know, as parents, we have a duty to protect our children, and it wears on us when these sort of instances happen and we feel we can't protect them, we didn't protect them. So there's a mental aspect to parents as well who are dealing with these subject matters. So, and these reports can be pulled up online through the Children's Law Center, through South Carolina Legislature, through the Attorney General's office. There, if you go to the SLED Sex Registry website, you can actually see who is registered on that website in your area. So you have a good idea of who may be watching. You know, there are guidelines about how far these people can live from a school, and so forth. So you really have to pay attention to what your children are doing online and who they're speaking with. I mean, these are basic guidelines that law enforcement will tell you, is to monitor. You want to trust your children, but as a parent, you still have to monitor their behaviors, especially in today's society. Uh, One of the things that we noticed when we were doing our research on this subject matter is that all these offenses are categorized in different aspects, from child pornography, sharing it amongst others in their little groups, to the individuals who actually commit these acts with children. That these individuals vary in every lifestyle, from public officials to private citizens to school members to just everybody. You never know who can be a predator when it comes to this subject matter. We do know that, we do believe that, you know, these people are innocent until proven guilty. We do know that some individuals are sitting in jail now who have been accused of this, but there's no evidence and so forth. So you really have to consider the facts of every aspect of these allegations against these individuals. The cases that we do mention on our website are we're very specific in this: either being charged or they've been prosecuted for these sexual criminal acts against children. It is a very slippery slope that you can get into. Uh, you know, we were hoping to have some guests call in on the subject matter and give us your opinion, give us your take on it. Like I said, you can call into the show anytime we're on the air, Sundays starting at 4 o'clock. And the phone number again is 803-497-8124. It is a dedicated line to this show. The line is open 24 hours. And we hope that the subject matters that we bring out here and the stories that we talk about here put you in an awareness. Now, our job is not to make your opinion for you. It's your own opinion. Our job is to provide the information and the details and the facts, and then you do with what you want with them. But when it comes to these sort of cases with children, you know, you really have to consider even people who don't have children. We have a commitment as a society to protect children. Uh, these individuals are even in when they are incarcerated are separated from general population because even criminals view these sort of individuals as the lowest of the low. Many of them get molested and beaten when incarcerated and put in the general populace. So even criminals have a standard. Um, the fact that 32 cases have already come to light at the Attorney General's office since January 1st is a shocking number. That averages out to 8 a month that are prosecuted. Now, the numbers for reported allegations are very high, and only probably about a quarter of them ever pan out to anything. Um, the report by the Children's Law Center is very informative, very detailed, very educating, which we think is one of the key aspects to everything we report on is you have to educate yourself in everything um, to understand and get a full idea of what's going on in today's society. Now, law enforcement has a very difficult job because they're having to deal with children in these subject matters. Um, law enforcement does not, how do you approach a child and ask them what this individual did to them and then expect them to be forthcoming? Um, so our hats go off to law enforcement agents who deal with these cases and the investigation. Um, the mind-boggling aspect of what they have to deal with mentally when they see this evidence, when they hear the words of the child, you know, it cannot be easy in any aspect. We're going to be running more stories on the child sexual predators in South Carolina as we move forward. And like I said, one of the benefits of this show is for us to get information out there in just a nonchalant way for people kind of get an idea of what news is going on around them that mainstream media may not report. Uh, we try to go in very detailed, very to the point, and it's our hope that our articles, our podcasts, our news is an awakening to society, to individuals, to let them know that, hey, maybe I need to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on. That the news, mainstream media, doesn't necessarily give me everything. A lot of people today go on social media to get their news. You have Facebooks for just about every community, every group, and that's where people have now gone to get their media. That's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, is because social media is the going format for news outlets. Stories such as this, stories such as Ashley Kidwell, stories such as, David Nahim. These are stories that mainstream media very rarely touches on in detail because they're considered a taboo in media, because it's considered a he said, she said aspect. So many people have been desensitized when it comes to domestic trauma or child sexual abuse. Oh, the child probably thing, and where do you draw the line? You have a 16-year-old young girl and a 18-year-old male, that are consensually having a relationship. If the parents are made aware of it, what do you do there? These things have been around for years, and what we forget, and we did this research on another story, Several states in the United States do allow sexual relations between certain age groups. It's one of the reasons why South Carolina's aspect came to state that depending on the age of the victim and the age of the perpetrator. So these are things that we looked at, and these are things that South Carolina started grasping more and more on. In the articles that we're hoping to put out, we have reached out to the Attorney General's office in emails, hoping to get information from them and a statement from them as to how South Carolina needs to move forward to prevent these crimes. What stronger legal ramifications should these perpetrators face? So this is kind of where we're going with this show. Like I said, we're on Sundays at 4 o'clock. We try to stay on and give information as much as we can. We hope people will start coming in, viewing, calling into the show, discussing these subject matters with us. That's what we have for today. We've been going now for 32 minutes, and hopefully the weather hasn't interrupted us too much with the connection. Uh, but we will be back on Sunday at 4 o'clock with the next episode. Um, so we appreciate everybody who does view our episodes, does join us, reads our articles. Please subscribe, follow um, on both our website, thedailycounternews.com, and our YouTube channel to give us an idea what sort of media and what sort of news you guys want us to start following. We appreciate